All right. All right, good evening, everybody. We do have quorum. It is 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this evening's meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. First item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 28th meeting. Minutes have been submitted to members of the board at ample time to review. Are there any changes or amendments to those minutes from members of the board? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Motion to approve the, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ruben, can you go ahead and unmute? Ms. Moses, can you unmute? Ruben, Deborah, I got to hear your eyes, or hear your yays or nays.
Oh, aye.
Aye. Ruben?
Aye.
There we go. All right. Minutes are approved as written. Motion carries. Second item on this evening's agenda is public hearing BZA-2021-02, various requests from the side setback requirements listed in the Unified Development Ordinance. Location is 1418 Madison Avenue, tax map number 90036-03-014. Owner of record is Sandra L. and Robert E. Harris. Applicant is Robert Harris. Zoning district is Neighborhood Conservation 15. And we will now hear from city staff.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see the PowerPoint. All right, so the applicant is requesting a variance from the Unified Development Ordinance side setbacks for a carport support post that was recently installed, and carport material and appearance compatibility for the NC15 district. Here's a vicinity map of Madison Avenue, runs parallel West Palmetto Street. You can see it at the top of the screen. This is 1418 Madison Avenue. The lot is 70 feet wide and approximately 200 feet deep. And it does share a western property line with 1422 Madison Avenue. The current zoning map, again, this is Neighborhood Conservation 15. And the future land use is in line with neighborhood conservation as well. So here is a plat provided by the applicant, 5, which shows the house and an existing detached garage storage building along the property line, and then the carport that was installed, the 14 by 16, or I'm sorry, the 12 foot by 26 foot long carport was installed where the driveway is next to the house on the western side of the house, and we'll see some pictures of that. So the Unified Development Ordinance talking about carports. This is what the applicant is requesting a variance from, that the support post for the carport should be no closer than 3 feet to any side property line. And also the ordinance talks about structures that are viewed from the public street, which would be Madison Avenue, need to be constructed in the same materials, color, and resemble the principal structure, which would be the house. It needs to resemble the house if it's visible from Madison Avenue, which it is. So here are some pictures. The top left, that is the front of the house. And you can see to the right, that is looking down the driveway from the street, and you can kind of see the carport at the end. And then a picture at the bottom is from the mailbox, where the carport is pretty much invisible once you go down the street a little ways. Here's a little bit closer shot, and you can see it's close to the property line shared with 1422 Madison Avenue. This carport was constructed without a zoning permit or building permits, and we got a complaint to codes enforcement, and that's what started this process of getting a variance. Right? And you can see the pictures. The fence is not exactly the property line. I'll show you the survey in a few slides, but as you can tell, it is much closer than 3 feet to the side property line. Here's a picture from the neighbors house from their backyard. And you can see that the roof does come up over their 7 to 8 foot fence. And they talked about getting some stormwater onto their property from the roof due to the proximity. The applicant got a survey done in anticipation of the BZA case. And it shows that the property line is actually inside the fence, closer to the applicant's carport than originally suspected. So originally the variance was for, you know, a larger number, a larger measurement, but now it looks to be closer to about 3 to 4 inches from the property line at the front post, and then the rear post 4 to 5 inches. So the variance would actually be 3 to 4 inches on the front post and about 4 or 5 inches from the back. So well inside the 3 feet that is mandated by the ordinance. So the variance conditions, that a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest. The homeowner had alternative permitted placement options beyond this particular placement of the carport, including the rear yard due to the type of structure. 2, that the spirit of the ordinance, public safety and welfare will be secured. The purpose of this district, the side setback in the carport, is to preserve open space between houses. The carport, again, was placed without zoning or building permit, so setbacks were not known, and the building department did no inspections to make sure it was rated for, you know, the 127, 130 mile per hour wind gusts that we get in this area. That there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The property is narrower than adjacent parcels and does have an existing structure, approximately 360 square feet that we saw on the plot plan, to the rear of the property, as well as a rear deck. So that did limit the placement of the carport on the property. These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Historically, the zoning ordinance have allowed at least 3 feet from the property line for accessory structures. In 2018, when we passed the Unified Development Ordinance, we tried to, we matched the setback for the principal building, the house, which would be 10 feet side setbacks. So adjacent single-family detached homes contend with similar side setbacks. Number 5, that because of these conditions, the application of ordinance to this particular piece of property would prohibit or unreasonably restrict the property. The property is currently utilized as a single-family residence and already contains 1 accessory structure and the rear deck, which limits the placement of the new carport. And finally, number 6, that the authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good. The carport was installed contrary to provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance without zoning or building permits, and this was initiated, the city's part in the process was by a complaint filed to city code enforcement because of its proximity to 1422 Madison Avenue. And that does conclude staff's report, and the applicant is here as well as the applicant's neighbor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there any questions for city staff or members of the board?
Has the neighbor complained any?
Yes, the neighbor initiated the codes enforcement complaint.
Apologize, I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Yes, ma'am, the neighbor at 1422.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. The board will now hear from the applicants. Mr. Harris, are you on the line, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you don't mind, so I'm going to swear you in. You promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, Mr. Harris, you may proceed.
Yeah, we did not realize that we needed to have the zoning approval, and we apologize for that. The carport follows mostly the driveway that had been there I don't know how many years we repaved over the same driveway back last fall. So we just wanted to put the carport there so we can have parking, and it's if you look at the other pictures, I'm not sure you saw the pictures of how close it is to the house. We could not get it any closer to the house to get any other variance on that. And we just ask for your approval of this.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the board? I have a question. We had a case similar to this years ago, but the complaint was filed pre-construction. With a carport like this, are there any permits that are required? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it would have required a zoning permit
Right.
to check setbacks and have a site plan,
Okay.
and then a building permit to check it for stability and to make sure it's anchored down against wind.
Right. And was that done for this one particularly?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Mr. Harris, when you constructed this, did you have a contractor do it or did you do it yourself?
We had a contractor come in and do it. And normally I would thought contractors would be responsible for that. But looking at the contract that was done, it clearly says in very small print that it's up to the owner to provide this.
I got you. I understand. Okay.
The only other thing I'd like to add is Mr. Johnston said, this lot, if you look at the plats of those lots, are quite a bit narrower than any others along that side of Madison on that block.
Right. Yes, sir.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Was that survey done after the carport was installed?
The pictures that you see with the flags, those were done after it was installed. The actual plat was done, I believe, in 2015.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Moses. Are there any other questions for the applicant for members of the board? All right. There being none, I think we have the neighbor. Is that correct?
Mr. Seegers.
Mr. Seegers? Mr. Seegers, are you on the line? If you are, unmute and say hello. Is anybody representing the neighbor on the line? Oh, we had somebody earlier.
We did, Mr. Seegers was on a little earlier.
Okay.
I don't see him now.
Okay. Did Mr. Seegers submit any sort of letter, recommendation, anything in writing, or can you discuss anything you guys talked about?
He was against the carport, and that
Okay.
was the opinion that he wanted to express tonight, was how close it was to his property, and he worries about stormwater issues and also the visibility that you can see it over the 7 or 8 foot fence that they have.
Gotcha.
And those were his complaints.
Okay. I hate to move on, but I think the members of the board, unless anybody has a severe objection, I think we can continue on knowing that the neighbor is not in favor of granting this variance. Do you not have any questions on that from members of the board? All right, there being none, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
Can I ask one quick question before we do that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Dees.
Were there any other options that you all looked at prior to, after knowing about the complaint? Any other type of things that you all probably thought about with construction? What's the word I'm trying to get out? Other options that you all looked into. Can you hear me? I'm probably muffling. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ms. Stevens.
Okay.
But,
I was just,
Mr. Harris?
At that time, there were no other options that we felt like, given the size of the carport and the restrictions of the driveway next to the house.
okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Harris, I just want to let you know that those pictures that you provided are in the staff report, so I don't want you to think we're trying to keep those pictures out, but they are in the staff report.
Yeah, I understand.
Mr.
Thank
Seeger, are
you.
you on?
I'm struggling with the audio a bit here.
There you go. We got you now.
Yeah, and my computer apparently doesn't like Zoom. I had to switch to my phone.
Oh, okay. That's fine. If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to swear you in. You promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth? That was Ruby? Who's, we've got somebody else on the line, I can see. Okay. Who is owner? Yeah. There's somebody on the line that has red walls in their den or background. Not to be kind of spooky, but that's what I see. If that's you, please chime in and let us know who you are. Okay. If you got red walls in your room, can you raise your hand? So at least I know you can hear me. There we go.
Yeah.
Look at the bottom left of your screen and see if you can select a microphone because we have no audio coming from you. Yeah, if you hover over the bottom left of your screen, there's a little microphone icon that'll pop up. It'll give you a menu and you can select different microphones. Or if you want it, you can just call in. You will call in? Okay. Do you have the number?
I think you was going to find earlier.
Okay.
It's in the email that we sent.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and call in. We'll give you a second. Or a minute, not a second, sorry. While we're waiting for this gentleman to call in, if, just to clarify for members of the board who haven't been through something like this, what are the ramifications if the board denies this variance request for the applicant?
Yeah, no, sure. Okay. I mean, they would, to fully comply, they would have to remove the structure or either find an appropriate location on the property to locate it, yeah. And get it worked out with the building department, of course. But,
Sure.
But y'all don't deal with building code issues.
Thank God.
Yes, I know.
On that line, I do have a question. If we are able to get a location that gets it within, outside the 3 feet, we've looked at it since then. We're going to have to do it at an angle rather than drive straight into the driveway. We may be able to do that, but would we be able to do that as long as we got the 3 feet? That's the question based on the additional questions that were asked there. I'd have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if it was to comply with the 3 feet, then we'd have to take a look at it. It would also have to be in the rear yard, I believe. But
Okay. I got you. All right, sir, with the red walls, I hate to do that. I don't know your name. Were you able to call in? No, sir? Okay. Well, we'll try to do this with sign language. Are you the neighbor? Okay, you are the neighbor. All right. And from what Mr. Johnson has said, you are opposed to this variance request being granted? Yes, sir. Okay. And the reasons listed were, first of all, the aesthetic value, you can actually see it over your fence, and you were worried about stormwater runoff too. Is that correct? Okay, I got you. All right. Okay. No, no music, no hold music. Mr. Harris, I apologize. We're working through some issues right now, but we'll get this done pretty quickly. Ish. Okay. Yeah.
Here.
Oh, wait, here he is.
Okay.
All right. I think we got you now, Mr. Seegers.
Hello.
There you are.
All right.
Right.
I am very sorry. I have been sitting here watching all this go on in a absolute panic.
That's okay. We got you now. Let me do this real quick. You probably said the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
I'm sorry, why?
I'm going to swear you in. You promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
Hello?
You there now? Try to mute your computer.
I'm going to do it on the computer. All right. I'm gonna X out the computer.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm on the phone only.
There we go. All right. Can you hear me okay now?
I can.
Wonderful. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Awesome. Okay. I didn't mean to say awesome. I'm sorry. You can go ahead with your statement, sir.
With my statement,
Yes, sir.
well, there's a number of reasons that we object, to the granting of these variances. Our number one objection, of course, is I know that there's been visual evidence presented, but sir, I'm the one that installed that fence. Me and I installed that fence in 2007. We went by the survey that Derek included in the package. It was done in 2005. The then owner, Cub Barron's name is listed on the survey. And we took tape measure and we went off the west side corners of the house and the west side corners of that garage. established the property line. And that fence was built 6 inches off of that line. Okay. Now, if I do nothing more on the west side, first of all, the building itself is installed, in my opinion, catty-cornered, because I know the fence is installed straight on the property line. It has to be catty-cornered, very simply because the measurement from the fence on the north side is different, and it's greater than the measurement of the fence on the southwestern side. If you will do nothing more than refer to the photographs that Mr. Harris submitted, you will see that mathematically it just don't make any sense. I think you have 2 photographs involved. The one is page 12 and the other one is page 13. Mm-hmm. Let's see, I'm getting myself together here. I'm already together, but okay. On page 13, you will see that, first of all, I mean, that carport is extremely close. And on that bottom photograph, you'll also see that it is installed on the ground. In Mr. Harris's letter, he states that this is held down by 4-foot spikes in the ground, and that go through the asphalt driveway. Obviously, it can't go through the asphalt driveway on the west side because there's no asphalt there. That's the dirt. So I have lots of safety concerns about this building. I lived in Horry County for 25 years, 1 block off the ocean front. And in hurricane situations, one of the first type thing to go flying was this type building. And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands of them. First time a Hugo or a Matthew comes through here, it's probably going to wind up in my backyard, and I'm not safe with it at all. That's one concern. The other concern is, since he installed it, the sun hardly even hits that fence. In just a short period of time, that fence has started to rot, and we're getting flooding on our side of the fence that we've never had before. So that's another concern. In addition to it, the carport itself is very unsightly. I mean, it looks like that when we've always used our deck a lot, and to us, it's a very unsightly view. It blocks the sun out, and there's little to no sun on that fence all day long. When you combine that with the kind of rain we've had since, it was installed, then it is constructed, off pressure treated lumber, but pressure treated lumber ain't gonna hold up to that. And so it's my fence, it's on my property, yet, because it's so close, I mean, it's going to be nearly impossible for me to properly maintain the fence. And I think it's also going to require maintenance at an accelerated rate. Ultimately, we feel that the existence of that structure affects the property value of our home, as well as the rest of the houses, in our 1400 block. In the 1400 block, if you'll go along Jackson and Madison Avenue, that's 2 pretty nice older streets. The 30-something successful 30-something-year-olds love to buy these big old houses and spend small fortunes on bringing them up to date. And so, across the street and within 100 yards of my house as well as Mr. Harris's house, I mean, there's houses that's probably worth $600,000 or $700,000, and more than that if you built them new. They probably wouldn't sell for that on Madison Avenue, but I can tell you that neighbors have called me asking what this is all about, and they are of great concern. I have traveled the entire length of Madison as well as Jackson Avenue 3 times just to make sure that what I'm about to tell you is correct. There is not one structure like this structure that's visible from the street on either one of those streets right there. And I've actually tried to look in a few backyards and I haven't found one yet. There's lots of add-ons. There's lots of additional carports and garages, but they all seem to follow the ordinance, which is basically make it look like your house.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, to me, listen, Mr. Harris states in his letter, you know, they spent a lot of money, and I'm sure they have. And to tell you the truth, as neighbors, we're glad to have them in the neighborhood because on at least one occasion, that house was sold as a foreclosure when I was in the midst of refinancing my house, and simply because it was included as a comparable to my house, which the appraiser said he had to do that because there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. And so it hurt the value of my house, and it therefore cost me more money because they wouldn't give me as good a rate because I had a greater loan to value. So those are the concerns I have. Let me say that I have every interest in being a good neighbor. I've never done anything like this in my life. Me and my wife, you know, we enjoy good neighbors. We have our entire lives, and we want to be good neighbors, but this is just beyond reason. I respect Mr. Harris. He's an accomplished man. I also believe that he's a Citadel graduate. And I just find it hard to believe that Mr. Harris wasn't operating under the auspices of it's easier to get forgiveness than it is to get permission. And there's plenty of room to relocate that on his lot. I can't explain to you why these lots are the size they are. Is in 1938, these 2 houses were built as a mother-daughter house. The kitchen windows match up perfectly. And they were built so that they could stand at the kitchen doing dishes or cooking or whatever and talk back and forth to one another. I believe that I think what they did is they bought one lot on this street. Some of these lots are really big lots. But if you take our lot and Mr. Harris's lot and you add them together, it's about the size of one of these lots at one of these real big houses that we have in the 1400 block. It's pretty much the size of that lot.
Yes, sir.
And they bought it, split it in 2, and lived just about their entire lives side by side. And this house, we have a substantial investment in it. We moved in 2005. It had been completely remodeled and added on to and updated. And we looked at it and bought it the same day, and there were people standing in line to place a bid. We paid over asking for this house. As seniors, we're in our 70s. This is where we intend to live the rest of our life. You know, we have to do what we can to protect the investment that we have. Because when you get our age, probably your greatest asset is the house.
Yes, sir.
So that's where we are. I mean, you know, I knew where the property lines was. I would have been, and also just one last thing is the way this is installed is these guys come with this thing knocked down on the back of a flatbed truck. They put this thing, it can't be that hard to relocate. They put this thing up in 1 hour and 25 minutes. while they were doing it, I asked them, I said, do you have a permit to do that? And I said, who are you working for? Oh, where did you come from? They never answered one single question. But I mean, they had that structure up, which has got to be some kind of, I was impressed with how little time it took to put it up. But those are our concerns, and we are just very opposed. It's kind of in our face type thing.
I'm sorry?
It's kind of an in our face type thing.
Yes, sir.
Also, if anybody has any questions about how I determine that I believe that the southwest corner of the structure is on our lot or on our property, I'd be glad to explain that.
All right, we'll take it into consideration. I appreciate that very much. The board has now heard from the applicant and from the neighbor.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Speaker.
I would just like to add one thing. I really take issue of him saying that I was asking better to ask for forgiveness than approval.
Yes.
It's nowhere near anywhere in what I've done within my life, anything. I've served on many commissions. I've been an elected official in Lee County before, and I take very strong opinion against that. As far as saying that other leg is on his property, we had it lined up on the side of the house to carry the same line frame as the house. And our surveyor certified that that leg is not on his property, it's on our property. As far as the flooding, we've had excess rain. And since we put this up and since the complaint was made, I've made sure to look out there, and there's been no additional puddling that I can see on that side of the fence, on my side of the fence. So those are a couple of challenges that I would like to make at this. And strongly, the only reason I came off mute was the strong dissension of his statement as to my civil grad and asking for forgiveness rather than approval.
Yes.
I've lived in about 6, 7 houses in the state of South Carolina. This is the first time that's come up. And I apologized in my letter for that. I accept the responsibility of that, but it was not done to what he said, and I really resent that.
Yes, okay. All right, we're gonna move forward here. Unless there are any questions from members of the board, I think we've heard everything we can hear. The chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
Where's my documents? Where's my documents?
Ms. Dees, Ms. Mocus, Ms. Moses, Mr. Chico. All right, the chair will now make a motion. And this is based on one of the 4 guidelines that this board has to follow. And one of those is hardship. And we cannot grant a variance request based on hardship that was created by the owner applicant. Keeping in that spirit, I make a motion that we deny the variance request based on the following findings of fact: that the variance in the terms of the unified ordinance will be contrary to the public interest when, because of special conditions, little forms of provision as well as in this case result in unnecessary hardship. The board cannot take in consideration hardship. The homeowner is responsible for making sure that all construction on his property has permits. The owner had alternative permanent placement options beyond this particular placement of the carport, including to the rear yard of the structure. That the spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will not be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the purpose of this zoning district is to have side setbacks and carport setbacks to reserve open space between houses. This carport is placed without a city zoning or building permit and was just not discovered until the neighbor brought this forward. That there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. Yes, the property is narrower than adjacent parcels and to the rear of the property as well. Rear setback that limits the placement of this carport in the rear of the property. But again, those are issues that would have been brought up if proper permitting were done. Number 4, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Historically, these zoning ordinances have required a minimum of 3 feet setbacks. This was accepted when we enacted the 2018 zoning designation for this property. And they most closely match the NC 15 zoning district with an average of 10-foot setbacks. Adjacent single-family detached homes contend with similar size setbacks. And again, these are things that would have been answered using proper permitting. Because of these conditions, the application of the Unified Development Ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or regionally restrict utilization of the property. The property still can be used. It's not going to restrict the utilization of a single-family residence. It contains 1 accessory structure and a rear deck. Those do limit the placement of the property, but it will not limit the use of this property. It will affect the placement of this structure, but not affect the use of the property. And finally, number 6, that the authorization of the variance will be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties of the public good, and the character of the district will be harmed by the granting of this variance because the carport was installed contrary to provisions in the current Unified Development Ordinance without first obtaining a zoning or building permit. And this was brought forward by, notified to us by the neighbor. Based on that, I make a motion that we deny the request for a variance. Chair will now entertain either a second.
I'll second.
Second. Oh,
I'm not sure who seconded it, but we'll take all 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All
aye.
opposed? The ayes have it. The variance request is denied. Mr. Harris, I do apologize. I know this is a kind of a rough thing to go through, but we have the permitting process in place for a reason, and I'm sure city staff will be more than happy to work with you as you guys move forward.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the committee. Apologize for not seeking the approvals before. I just didn't know about it. I appreciate the committee and the action you've taken.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Ms. Sandra and Mr. Steegers. Thank you guys very much. You are more than welcome to remain for the rest of this riveting meeting, but I understand if you want to step away. All right, next item on the meeting's agenda is BZA hearing number BZA 021-03. It's a variance request from the requirements listed in tables 2.6, lot and building landscaping, table 4-9, parking for commercial use, and parking designation for non-residential uses, in section 4-9 of surfacing and maintenance of off-street parking areas listed in the Unified Development Ordinance for a commercial building. Location is 1809 Gregg Avenue, tax map number 90025-02-009. Owner of record is Richard Habacost. Applicant is PD Building Supply. Zoning district is listed as CG Commercial General. And the board will now hear from city staff.
Good evening. Thank you. On my. All right. This parcel that is at question here is located behind the Mickey Finn's liquor store, located on South Cashwood Drive at Gregg Avenue. Here's a close-up of it. It's across the street from, I think it's Haverty's Furniture Store's parking lot. And to the rear of it is Done Right Automotive Services. And then to the east of it are several rental houses. It is, the entire area pretty much is zoned general commercial. And the future land use for it is neighborhood conservation and a mix of auto urban commercial as well. The applicant is requesting variances from a number of requirements for commercial development that are outlined in the Unified Development Ordinance for new construction. The setback comparison, just like we had a similar case not too long ago, the front setback that the old ordinance required was 35, the new one is 50. And the side setbacks under the old ordinance were 5, and now that's 20. And then the rear setback was 20 under the old ordinance, now it's 40. And the requested setbacks are for a front setback of 33 feet, 15 feet in the rear, and side setbacks of 5 feet on the left side and 35 feet on the right side. So this is a photo of the site. It's completely vacant now. Up till very recently, it had a house on it, but the house was removed. So it is a vacant lot, and it is used right now, as you can see, I believe, for some parking for Mickey Finn's. And but the site plan on the right side shows where they want to put this 20 by 90, basically a storage building. And storage buildings are not permitted without a principal building on the lot. And as you can see, there is no principal building on the lot, nor is there room for one. So the owner has agreed to install a small office with a bathroom to make this comply with the requirements for a principal building. Although he does not intend to use it for anything besides storage. And it would be 5 feet off of the property line that it shares with Mickey Finn's and 35 feet off of the other side property line. And the lot itself is only 60 feet wide. These are some photos of what the building will look like. As you can see, it's a metal storage building, and the applicant also has asked for to not be required to put in the improved parking space that is required or any of the landscaping that is required. And a commercial parcel does require foundation plantings around the building itself, and then some shrubbery to go around the parking area to shield headlights and to soften up the character of the street. And with the amount of office space that he's providing, he would only be required to provide one improved parking space. So the variance conditions, the first one, that a variance from the terms would not be contrary to the public interest. This lot is sized for residential use, but zoned for commercial uses. And it is surrounded by commercial uses on 3 sides and rental single-family housing on the 4th side. But parking and landscaping is required for all new commercial development within the city of Florence. That the spirit of the ordinance will be done. The construction of a storage building without a principal building is not permitted by the ordinance. Providing the small office creates a commercial building in strict compliance with the intent of the ordinance. The purpose of landscaping is to improve the appearance of the site, diminish expanses of urban infrastructure, and mitigate nuisances such as noise and light pollution. 3, that there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The size of the parcel does limit its flexibility for commercial uses. But these conditions do not generally apply to the property. Lot sizes in the immediate vicinity vary significantly. This particular lot was historically used for a single family residence. 5, that because of these conditions, the application to this property would prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Requiring adherence to the setbacks for the commercial general district would limit the owner to a 530 square foot building in total available building size. And even if required setbacks are lessened, landscape requirements would not restrict the utilization of the property. And 6, that authorization of a variance would not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting the variance. Because of the small size of the existing parcel, reducing setbacks for the building would enable commercial development, but landscaping of the site would protect the public good. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for city staff or members of the board? All right, there being none, we will now move on to the applicant. Mr. Haverkos, are you on the line, sir?
I am.
If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to swear you in. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Very well. You may proceed.
Well, I'm here being represented by Dana from PD Building. To do most of the talking, I guess. This is all a little bit new to me. I own Mickey Finn's, which is adjacent to the other side of this property. I purchased the house with the intent to store. I have some cars and a boat, some other things. And I have a lease on the Mickey Finn's property for the next 34 years. I'm in the process of purchasing the land from Bobby Griffin. We're in the final negotiations to get it out of his estate. So I would be the permanent property owner of both properties. That's really all I have to add. The rest of this is going to be up to you and zoning, coding, and Dana, I guess.
Okay. I do have a question. The property that's to the rental house that's still there, have there been discussions with them as to what you guys are doing?
Rodney Godwin owns that. He's a good
Oh.
friend of mine. I bought the house. He owns the entire corner. He owns Dunright. He owns the next 3 houses.
Okay.
And he was the one who put me in touch with PD Building Supply to build the building.
Oh.
I think they've done some work together in the past, so he has no objections to it either. I donated the house that was on there. It had a bunch of asbestos. It was going to cost more to fix it up and try to rent it than to salvage it. So I just went with I gave it away to a guy, took a tax deduction, and I moved on with my life. And now currently it's an overflow parking for my staff.
Right.
Because there's nothing on there. I graveled it. I had no intent of paving it. It's porous now, so it absorbs all the rainwater. There's no runoff on any of the adjacent property. Well, I own the one side of it, and the other side, there's no runoff. So,
are there any questions for Mr. Haverkoss from members of the board? All right, and I do have a question for the city. Essentially, what we have are 3 variance requests: one for landscaping, one for setbacks, and one for parking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, my understanding from what was submitted in the report, and excellent job on doing that, if Mr. Haverkoss listed as 5 or less parking spaces, that removes the need for variance for the paving and resurfacing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, all right. So we could kind of mentally put that aside. The landscaping portion, essentially what they're asking for is a variance to do both the front, back, and side landscape requirements. And I'm sorry, the foundation requirements. Is that correct? Okay. And then as far as the setbacks are what they are, you see, we've done with those. My only concern that I had, and I drove by the property today before I came here, was there's no barrier between that home and what's essentially going to be your storage property. But if you say the property owner, if that's a rental house, then
it is. Can I say something about that? I had approached Rodney. He just rented. I was going to actually rent that house from him for my general manager, so he'd be on site and actually would live there. Rodney had already signed a contract, so I missed out by about 4 hours.
right.
But he said the guy that lives there, or the tenant, he works at Blackjack Harley and his wife and has 2 kids.
Okay.
I have offered them at my expense to build any fence that he so desires, and I've offered that to Rodney, anything that would mitigate any of the, whatever it is, and that's on the table.
Okay.
I need to put that in writing. Rodney knows that, and so does he. So far, he hasn't requested anything.
Okay.
But the second that he does, we'll have a professional fencing company out there to put whatever he wants, whether it's brick or wood or vinyl.
Well, I appreciate that, because the driveway that the guy uses is pretty narrow as it is.
And his driveway is literally 1 inch.
Right.
1 inch off the lot line. And I've told him he can share. He's got multiple cars. I said, don't try to just fit on your driveway. If you need to drive on my property and park your car because you got friends and family around that also. All it is a gravel field right now. So it's, no big deal.
Yeah. And since, and the property behind it is commercial general, is that correct? Because I looked at it's warehouse-y looking, but that was my only concern that I had as a voting member, not necessarily chair, was just the landscaping, all that right side. All right. Are there any other questions for members of the board for either city or for the applicant?
No.
Right. There being
Answer
done.
pretty much everything. Oh.
I'm
I'm trying to visualize this. Is this directly next door to Mickey Finn's?
It is. It's there's a 15-foot distance. When I built Mickey Finn's in 1999, I think that was the setback code on that property at the time, fire code. I don't know what it was. Charlie Grace built that building. So it's 15 feet off the lot line where my business is. And this lot, the problem with this lot, I don't even know, I wouldn't even want to be at this meeting, is this lot is only 60 feet wide. You'd literally have to build about a 6-foot wide building by about 100 feet long, and you could maybe have 2 people walk in it. It's just such a narrow property. Now, in the future, if Bobby does sell it and deeds the property over to me, I don't know what the process is, but I would probably merge these 2 lots and it would become one. That would be my intent. And then so the easement is not going to be any big deal because I own both of the properties.
All right.
Okay.
right, thank you, Ms. Moses. Ms. Dees, it sounded like you were trying to chime in. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, sir. You pretty much asked some of the questions that I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions, any other questions from members of the board? All right. Thank you, Mr. Pappas. There being no other questions, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request. Ms. Dees, Ms. Moses, Mr. Chico? All right, before we continue, I do want to say that I am a frequent patron of Mickey Finn's, have been for quite a long time. And Mr. Pappas, I don't know you personally, but I do know your father very, very well. I just want to put on the record there.
I'll pass on the hello.
Yeah, please do. We haven't had Masterworks Choir or anything in about a year, and it's killing me. I know it's killing me.
It's bothering him too. Trust me, he loves Masterworks.
I'm sure almost as much as Nebraska football. Is that right?
Yeah, he's building a baseball stadium in Nebraska as we speak, donating it to his hometown.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nebraska football and singing is his jam, I guess.
There you go. Does anybody on the board want to make a motion? All right, there being none, the chair will now make a motion. I move that we grant the request for variance based upon the following findings of fact. The variance from the terms of the zoning ordinance will not be contrary to public interest when, because of special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions will in this individual case involve unnecessary hardship. Because this lot is sized for residential lot use, but zoned for commercial uses. It's surrounded by commercial uses on 3 sides and rental signage, family housing on the 4th side. Parking landscaping is required for all new commercial development within the city of Florence, but as we stated earlier, limiting the parking space to 5 spaces answers that. 2, the spirit of the zoning ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the construction of a storage building without a principal building is not permitted. However, the applicant has provided a small office and a bathroom which brings it into compliance. The purpose of the landscaping is to improve the appearance of the site, diminish expansion of urban infrastructure, and mitigate nuisance such as noise and light pollution. The applicant has already stated his willingness to work with the homeowner, not the renter, but the homeowner next door to provide any sort of improvements there. But there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, namely that the size of the parcel limits its flexibility for commercial usage. 4, that these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity, and that lot sizes in the immediate vicinity are vary significantly. This particular lot was historically used for a single family residence. And 5, and because of these conditions, the application of zoning ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict utilization of the property by requiring adherence to the setbacks for the general commercial general district, would limit the owner to a 530 square foot in total available building size. Even if required setbacks are lessened, landscape requirements would not restrict utilization of the property. And finally, number 6, that authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance because of the small size of the existing parcel. Reducing setbacks for the building would enable commercial development. Landscaping of the site would protect public good, and the applicant has already said his willingness to work with the homeowner next door to make that happen. The chair will now wait for a second for members of the board.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chico. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. The variance request is granted.
May I have some clarification on
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
So I understand the setbacks you're good with, the parking situation.
Right.
Were you requiring him to put a little bit of landscaping along the front of the building?
No, ma'am.
Just the fence?
Yeah, I kind of scooted over that. But the spirit of that was what the applicant stated, that he is working with the homeowner
Just to put a fence on
to
that
put a fence on
property.
that property. And if the homeowner's fine with that, then from my point of view as a voting member, not necessarily chair, but then I will be fine with that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Mr. Hamacost, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Before we adjourn, I would like to point out to members of the board that we have a meeting in 2 weeks. Put that on your calendar, boys and girls. We missed one in February, so we get to have 2 in March. Do we have any new business we need to discuss? No? That's it. All right.
No, thank you.
All right, and I need to have a motion to adjourn. Oh, come on now.
I'll make a motion to it.
Thank you. There it is. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
There we
Aye.
go. Motion carries. You guys have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
2
Thank
weeks,
you.
what's that date?
Do what?
2 weeks, what's that date?
March 25th? 25th.
25th. 6 PM.
6 p.m. Yes, sir.